We are nearly at the midway point of 2022. There have been some great vinyl releases this year thus far. I will talk you through some of my favorite new albums and just vinyl reissues of the year on this episode of Talking About Records. My name is G.I. Sanders from NTX Vinyl, a small chain of independent shops in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. If you aren't local, but you are in the United States, you can shop online at ntxvinyl.com and would love it if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Facebook and Instagram. All right, it's hard to believe we are already nearly midway through the year 2022. This has been, in my opinion, a great year for new music, a great year for a lot of vinyl reissues. Obviously, the industry is going through quite the evolution in regards to trying to keep up with demand for vinyl. The influx of new collectors just is overwhelming, and it's super exciting to see that the trajectory of vinyl sales is going up month over month, year over year. With every study that comes out, I'm always amazed to see about the impact it's having on the music industry and the way people are kind of consuming physical media in general. But so this year, I think has been fantastic. I've got a bunch of new music in here. I've also got a couple things that I just haven't owned on vinyl, haven't been readily available on vinyl. So let's get going. I'm going to start going through my favorite albums of the year thus far. I don't have these in any real particular order, but there are a couple up front that I just felt I needed to put first and foremost. The first one was a no-brainer for me, and that is Jack White's Fear of Dawn. Just an absolute fun listen. I love the record. I've always been a Jack White fan, obviously going back to the White Stripes, but his other bands as well, the Raconteurs, the Dead Weather, and obviously all the solo work he's done. This was a really interesting album. I've listened to a lot of interviews with Jack because he is a mentor in many ways, and he fascinates me, not only from a musician standpoint, but from a business standpoint of what he's created with Third Man Records. In this album, he recorded all on his own. He played every instrument, which is just hard for me to wrap my head around, even though I know lots of people do it, but it's still, when you listen to this and you consider the way he recorded it, one track at a time, one instrument at a time, it really stands up. I just recently saw him live on this tour, which was phenomenal. These songs shine even more live, as you would expect. And it's just a great record. I think there's a lot of experimentation. This he recorded all digitally, which typically is not something Jack does. He flips around and does a lot of different recording styles and tries out different things. So on this one, he really took it to the next level. From a recording standpoint, just went all in. So you can tell this is multi-tracked and Pro Tools out across the board. And he did that as a way of just kind of inspiring himself, because he was stuck at home. He recorded this kind of before he couldn't start touring again. And so for me, it's just a really fun, angst-ridden record. He's got a follow-up. He wrote two records, or he wrote a lot of songs, and he split it into two albums. So the follow-up to this is coming out here shortly, I believe in July 2022. I'm excited to hear that one. It's supposed to be a more chill record, more kind of acoustic bass, versus this is kind of the more aggressive album, which he said, coming out of the pandemic and not being able to tour for so long, he just said it felt natural that he would come out of the gate with something a little more aggressive, so absolutely fantastic record. I have seen mostly glowing reviews for this album from everybody. When I say that, I mean like people like you and me, not necessarily like journalists or anybody. But I think it's been really well received. I can tell you again, the tour is super fun, and I can't recommend that enough. And I know I'm going to have this on the turntable for a long time coming. Absolute great record. Number two on the list, this was another little bit of a no-brainer, mainly because it's in high rotation still right now, and that is We by Arcade Fire, a band I have been a fan of for a long time. There are a couple albums in their catalog that I gravitate towards the most, that primarily being Funeral and The Suburbs. but I do like most of their catalog. I think Reflector's the only album that I don't own. I own everything else. This one caught me off guard. This is an album I really wasn't expecting to gravitate towards as much as I have. I heard the single, which I believe, or I don't know if it's a single, but the first song I heard was Lookout Kid from this album, which I liked. It was kind of a catchy tune. By the time I dove in and had a couple spins on this, really grabbed me. Lyrically, it is probably the best thing I've heard in years from anybody. Like I love it that much. It has really spoken to me, especially again coming out of the pandemic and knowing when they wrote this, knowing that they were cooped up, and kind of conceived this album within that environment. There is a thread through this album that I think is undeniable in regards to knowing that time and place. The instrumentation, as always, from Arcade Fire is super interesting, super involved. There's a lot of different sounds, a lot of different instruments, which I love. It's outside of the box for me, honestly, because I listen to a lot of rock, R&B, soul, some jazz, but I don't do a lot of like multi-instrument bands that are very indie rock like this is, but for me, it just really hits a spot. And I think it has a certain vibe and an aesthetic that feels very timeless right off the bat. I've only been listening to it for a month. So check out We by Arcade Fire if you haven't. Absolute great record. One of the best of the year so far for me personally. Next on the list, Brightside by the Lumineers. This is an album. It's short. It's like not even 40 minutes. I think it's 30 some odd minutes. 8 or 9 tracks, I think. I've had it on play since it came out, and I just kind of always gravitate towards it because it's a really easy listen. That's what I like about it. Sometimes you just want to put on something that's chill, that's quick, that's easy, that doesn't really challenge you. Other times it's the exact opposite, and you want to be challenged, right? But for me, this is one of those albums that if I know the Lumineers, which I do, this is exactly what I would expect from them. It's not outside the box. It's not them branching out of their comfort zone. It's them writing really straightforward, good, folky pop songs. Like that's this album to me, and that's what I love about it. I love sometimes that can work, that you don't have to overthink it. They're coming on tour to the Dallas area later in the summer. I think I'll probably end up checking that out. But yeah, it's a fun album. I don't think there's a bad song on it. I think songwriting wise, again, it's straight down the middle of what you'd expect from them. So if you're a Lumineers fan, I have no doubt that you would enjoy this one as well. So check out Brightside by Lumineers. All right, next one on the list. This is one that I guarantee you nobody would predict I'd have this on the list. Well, I take that back. Maybe a few people, but this is not one that came out this year. This is the first time on vinyl. And this is an album called Buick Men by Hagfish. You've probably never heard of this record, and that's because this is a band from my local area, which is Dallas-Fort Worth. This originally came out in 1993, I think, 1993. This is a punk band. This is a band in the vein of the Descendants and Green Day and the Ramones and that type of thing, which again is not a lot of what I listen to. I listen to a little bit of punk here and there, but this is an album that came out on my label, the DFW Legacy Series. Myself and a couple buddies started this label a few years ago to reinvigorate albums that came out in the heyday, which is the kind of the early 90s through early 2000s, if you will, of the CD, which means none of it was on vinyl for the most part, especially when it came to local releases. So Buick Men by Hagfish is one of, I think, almost 20 albums we have brought to vinyl in the last 2 years since we started the DFW Legacy Series. This is one that I am extremely proud of because it was in many ways the introduction for me personally to the local music scene. One of the first bands I caught on to and one of the first albums that I remember owning from a truly local artist. They did go on to have a little bit of national success in the early 90s, but it was pretty short-lived. But if you know bands like the Toadies, Tripping Daisy, Reverend Horton Heat, Deep Blue Something, those are the bands that were in that scene that kind of broke out. And for every one of those, there was another 30 bands that were just as great, and Hagfish was one of those bands. They had some success, and their members have gone on to do a lot of great things too. So check out Hagfish, Buick Men, if you're not familiar. Next on the list, this was probably the most surprising one to me personally, and I'll tell you why. Unlimited Love by the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Here's why this is surprising. I have not been a fan of the Red Hot Chili Peppers in many years. In fact, the last album I bought from the Red Hot Chili Peppers was Californication. I loved Californication. After that, they lost me. I just kind of fell off. I wasn't listening to a lot of radio-friendly stuff, and most of what they were doing kind of post-Californication, I feel like, was a lot more pop-laden and radio-friendly. So this album comes out, and again, I haven't listened to him in many years. I know this is John Frusciante coming back in the band, so that kind of piqued my interest a little bit. He's been in and out of the band over the years. And in this case, it really was the case of, man, I'm selling so many of these records. I sold a lot of this record, right? A lot of pre-orders, a lot of copies sold in store. And I just felt obligated. I felt like, man, I need to check this out. And I don't do that with every album. There's a lot of new releases that come through my shop and what I sell online. I don't have time to listen to every single album. That's not even possible, right? But this was one where it got enough attention and enough discussion. And it's the Red Hot Chili Peppers. It's a big, iconic band from my era, late 80s, early 90s, what I love. So I felt that obligation. I put it on, and it really surprised me. I was surprised how much I gravitated towards it. I love, I think, what Frusciante brings back to the band from what I've heard of the other albums that I kind of passed over, I think is a really key element here. And I think the rhythm section is just unbelievable. I think this many years on, the fact that Chad Smith and Flea can still gel that well and create such a fury of bass and drums is fantastic. Lyrically, there's some interesting moments, but overall, I think there's some great songs. I really do. Black Summer, I think, is a cool single. Here Ever After, Not the One. It's Only Natural. These Are the Ways. Just a lot of fun songs. Again, if you like the Chili Peppers, I'd be hard pressed to think you wouldn't enjoy this. But for me, not being a Chili Peppers fan for years, I was pleasantly surprised. I have still listened to it a lot. My kids love this album. They're really still into it a lot, and I've still got it in kind of regular rotation. So again, this was a surprise one for me, and I'm happy to kind of rediscover a band, right? It's been kind of fun, so I might check them out when they're on tour as well. Next on the list, not a new release, but an album that was not particularly easy to find at all on vinyl. That is The Greatest Hits by The Police. This has never been released in the US, I don't think. And if you go internationally, I think you had to go back to the early 90s to find a pressing of this exact record by The Police. So I was very excited when this came out. This is a half-speed master version from Abbey Road Studios, which some of these can be hit or miss. I've heard some stories that they're not always the best. To my ears, this one sounds fantastic. I've been very happy with it in regards to the mastering and just the sound quality and the production and in general. And so I put this on just saying, yeah, I like the Police. I've got probably 3 or 4 Police albums, the main core albums in their catalog, right? But it still blows me away. I put it on, and you want to talk about a true greatest hits. This is 4 sides of literally every song every word to, as far as like the main hooks and just the songs itself. So that you kind of know that as a Police fan, but when you compile them all together in this format, it really hits you hard and just shows you the genius of this band. So check it out. This is still readily available, I believe. Thankfully, they pressed enough of this one to where it wasn't like super rare or anything. It came out just a month or 2 ago, and has been a great seller for me. I've sold a bunch of these, and I know everyone I've talked to loves it just as much as I do. So check out the Police Greatest Hits. Again, not a new release as far as net new music, but again, first time on vinyl in a very long time, and I believe first time in the US. So great album that I've been enjoying a lot. Next on the list, Earthling by Eddie Vedder. So this is a tricky one. You'll notice this is a unique pressing. The version with the full artwork actually isn't even out yet. This was an early, what they called the fresh pressed version. It was only available through Pearl Jam's 10 Club, which is their fan club. Pretty limited, I think, to a couple thousand copies. It's a fun record. I think it's about half or maybe 3/4 of a great record. And then there's the kind of tail end where there's a few albums where there's some guest musicians on it, very notable guest musicians, Elton John, Stevie Wonder, where those songs just, they don't quite gel, in my opinion. But as a whole, very excited about this album. He had an amazing backing band on this with Chad Smith from the Chili Peppers on drums, and just a whole cast of other musicians that contribute that are really, really great. I'm disappointed that I didn't get a chance to see this band tour because it's probably the only time that these songs will ever be played. It feels that way. I don't know if they planned it that way, but with as busy as the Chili Peppers and Pearl Jam and everyone else who's involved in this, Andrew Watt, who produced it, very busy producer as well. It feels like that one opportunity where you could have heard these songs live. I heard a couple of them at Ohana Fest 2021, at the tail end of 21, where they played a few of these. But overall, it was probably a one and done thing. I don't think this band will ever get back together as the Earthlings and perform and write again. I could be totally wrong. I'm only guessing on that. They haven't said one way or the other, but it just kind of feels like a one-off, and it feels like a time and place. But it's a fun album. There's some great songs on this. So if you're an Eddie Vedder fan, you're a Pearl Jam song, I think you're missing out if you haven't checked it out. The broader release on vinyl is coming, I believe, mid to late summer. So check it out on vinyl, and obviously you can stream it now. But it's a cool album, and I'm excited that Eddie kind of did some different things. It doesn't sound like a Pearl Jam record at all to me, which is kind of the best part. I'm glad that he kind of branched out and tried some different stuff. So a couple more. Next on the list, this is Things Are Great by Band of Horses. This is a band that I have kept up with kind of in peaks and valleys over the years. Again, I've got, I think, probably 3 or 4 of their albums. I don't have the entire catalog, but I've got most of it. Really great band. This is kind of similar to what I was saying about the Lumineers record. It's exactly what I'd expect. Didn't throw me any curveballs. It wasn't a departure from their sound, but just really good tunes, really good pop rock songs. It's an easy listen. And again, something I enjoy when I'm in the mood for something like that. So there's a time and place for albums like that. Again, just like I mentioned, a time and place for albums where you want to be challenged, or where you don't put on headphones and really dive into it, right? This isn't one of those. This is a simple album. Again, it hits pretty straight down the middle, in my opinion, but there's some great songs on it. Crutch is the main single, I think. And then everything else, it's just, again, great songs, just good songs all the way through, and that's what I'm in it for. The songwriting and the melodies, bands like Band of Horses and the Lumineers, they're great at that. They're great at what they do, and I appreciate that they're still doing it, right? So they are on tour, I believe, this summer with the next band, and that is the Black Keys. And I'm going to sound like a broken record, but very similar. Like, if you're a Black Keys fan, you're going to love this record. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing outside the box and groundbreaking about it. But, songs like Wild Child, which is the single, Good Love, Your Team Is Looking Good. There's some fun songs on this. How Long, Happiness. It's been a fun listen too. I've had it on repeat since it came out. It just stays on my turntable because it's so fun. Just, during an afternoon or an evening, just to put it on and be able to jam. Blues, rocky type style stuff, which you'd expect from the Black Keys. Again, nothing out of the ordinary, but I like stuff like that from bands I know. It's kind of a sure thing. I know that I can get a Black Keys record. I know exactly what I'm going to get. And in most cases, there's going to be good melodies. There's going to be good hooks. There's going to be good arrangements and solid production from Dan Auerbach, as always. So if you're a Black Keys fan, I don't think you can go wrong with Dropout Boogie. Last on the list is my best or my favorite albums from 2022 this far. This one could have been first on the list. I put it last, just the way it fell. And that is from Austin, Texas, Spoon. This is Lucifer on the Sofa. I have not listened to a Spoon album as much as this one in years. I absolutely love it, and I think it may be the best album they've put out since one of the first couple records. Like, I love some of their earlier stuff, and I've kept up with the band over the years, but this album in particular, man, so fantastic. As far as standout tracks, The Hardest Cut was the single off of it. The song Wild is fantastic. The song My Babe is fantastic. On the Radio, the title track's great. The whole thing is fantastic. If you're into kind of guitar bass, indie stuff, again, pop songs, pop rock songs, good hooks, good melodies, good arrangements. I kind of feel like I'm repeating myself here, but it really is that. And I think I would probably put this, if I had to pick my favorites, again, these weren't in order, I would probably put this right up there with the Jack White record, Fear Dawn, and with the Arcade Fire record. This would probably be in the top 3 of the year thus far for me. I absolutely love this Spoon record. Check it out if you haven't already heard it. Everyone I've recommended this to, and everybody that I've seen playing this record or heard talk about it, has the same exact glowing reviews. Absolutely fantastic. Songwriting is spot on. So there's my list of 2022 thus far. I did this for two reasons. One, it makes for a great video because I think midway point is always good to come up with a list. And this will make it that much easier when I do my end of the year list, because I can go back and see what the first half looked like. So I'm excited to see if there are this many good albums coming out in the second half of 2022 as there was the first. That's my list. I'd love to hear your list. If you had any comments on what I put together, I'd love to hear that as well. Thanks as always for watching. This has been another episode of Talking About Records. We'll pop up some other videos. Stick around on the channel and we'll see you again next time.